Hi everyone, it's Laura Volpes and today I'm here to share with you some inspiration using products from the new Spellbinders and FSJ Christmas Project Kit. The kit includes lots of fun products. We have one large stamp set here with some polar bears and coordinating dies to cut your images out. There is a second large stamp set with lots of Christmas and holiday greetings, and there are dies that will allow you to cut some candy canes as well as some branches, holly leaves and berries. There is a fun embossing folder, pattern papers, and in the kit you will also find 4 pre-kitted cards with full supply list and instructions so that you can get creating right away. For my first project, I started by stamping the polar bears using black licorice ink, and I'm going to color them using these Magic Wand pencils by Davenport. They are also available on the Spellbinders store and they are really fun. I'm going to do some very easy coloring, and this, by the way, is whipped cream cardstock by FSJ. I'm going to color these as polar bears, which means they will mostly be white. I'm adding a little bit of shading with a Jane's Gray pencil, and I'm using a very light hand and some circular motions, and this way I'm sure that I don't get any harsh lines and I get a nice and smooth transition towards that white, which is going to be the main color of these bears. Coloring these images as polar bears is very fast and very easy because you mostly leave the areas white and you just add a little bit of shading. And for today's video I'm only going to show you the coloring for one of the bears because I used the same technique and the same colors for all the bears in my cards today. The paws at the back will be a little bit darker because they are further back, and so the shadows will be a little bit more pronounced. And in order to intensify the contrast a little bit more, I'm coming in with a Raven pencil. So this is a black pencil, and I'm adding just a little bit of color in the areas where I have my shadows. I'm not extending my black all the way where I have my gray, but I'm just adding a very thin layer there, again using a very light hand and circular motions. As a last step, I am going to come back in with my Jane's Gray pencil in order to just smoothen out the transition between my black and my gray pencil, always using a very light hand and these circular motions. Using this technique is going to give you a little bit of texture in your coloring, and this is going to bring even more interest because it will recreate the impression of fur on your polar bears. I went ahead, colored the 2 cubs with the same technique, and I also die cut all the images with the coordinating dies. For my card base I have some pattern paper cut to 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches and some bubblegum cardstock that I cut to 3 3/4 by 5 inches. To add a little bit more texture and interest to this panel, I'm going to run it through my die cutting machine with the embossing folder in the kit, and you can see what a fun detail this added to the panel and to the card. To step up this panel even more, I decided to do some ink blending. I started by blending whipped cream ink on the edges of the panel using a foam blending tool. And I am starting from outside the cardstock and I'm moving towards the center, mostly focusing this white pigment ink towards the edges of the panel, because the next step is to come in with my Watermelon Fusion ink by FSJ and blend that towards the center. You can see here that I have a few marks at the bottom of the panel, but I'm not worrying about them because I know that that part will be covered in the end. The portion where I need to have that smooth blend is at the top of the panel. Next, I die cut some glitter cardstock using the Winter Hues die by FSJ. The glitter cardstock is part of the Sparkle Trio specialty paper pack, and it was just perfect for my winter scene. I trimmed down the die cuts to fit my card front, and I can then go ahead and adhere everything together. For this I like to use liquid glue because it gives me a little bit of time to move things around and make sure that I get the perfect alignment. I first glued down the sky background, which is that dry embossed panel, to the base of my card, and then I glued down the 2 hue sides, first adhering them to each other and then gluing them down to my background. I stamped one of the sentiments from the same stamp set with the polar bears using black licorice ink on some whipped cream cardstock, and I die cut it with the coordinating dies, and then I completed my scene by adhering down the bears. I'm going to have 2 at the front and I'm going to adhere the 3rd one at the back because layering images and panels like this on a scene card immediately creates a sense of depth, which increases interest in the scene itself. I adhered the sentiment, slightly overlapping it with the trees, and then I finished off the card using some sequins in matching colors, and these are part of the Splash Zone sequin mix by Spellbinders and FSJ. And here is my first project for today, very cute and very quick and easy to make. My second project for today is a mini pillow box, and for that I used the mini pillow box die by FSJ to die cut one of the pattern papers which is included in the kit. This is the die cut you obtain, and all you have to do is to fold the cardstock along the score lines. There is a score line in the center, one on the side, and there are also some curved score lines at the top of your pillow box, and this is basically what is going to create the lid for the box itself. Once all the score lines are nice and folded, you can go ahead and use that little flap at the side to glue your pillow box shut, and once the glue is dry, you can then go ahead and pop it up from the sides. You're going to push where you have the fold on the side of your pillow box so that you can fold your lids closed. Another super cute project which is really quick to make, and to step it up a little further we are going to use the holly berry, holly leaves and branches die, which are also included in the kit, to create a little decoration for the pillow box. I die cut the holly leaves from some Cool Pull cardstock, the holly berries from some Watermelon Fusion cardstock, and the branches are die cut out of some Turbo Teal cardstock. And the easiest way that I found to put this little wreath together was to first glue down the 2 branches to each other and the holly leaves to each other as well. When the glue is dry, I can go ahead and glue the holly leaves on top of the branches, and then as a last step I'm going to glue down 3 holly berries on top of the whole composition. I added some glue to a scrap piece of cardstock, and then I am basically dabbing my holly berries in the glue so that I can add a little bit of glue at the back and I can glue them down on top of my wreath. I also stamped and die cut one of the sentiments in the stamp set that was included with the kit, and I finished off the pillow box by adhering the little floral composition on the top left corner and the sentiment die cut at the center. And here is a close-up look at this mini pillow box. Again, very quick and very easy to make, but just so adorable. Next, I decided to create a Lollipop card, so I used the paper fan die by FSJ to die cut 3 panels out of some bubblegum cardstock. I also cut a little circle out of some white cardstock, and you will see in a minute what I need it for. Since these die cuts are 3.5 inches tall, if you leave them as is, your final rosette will measure 7 inches, which was a little bit larger than I wanted for my project, and so I used my trimmer to trim this down so that I have a 2.5 inches piece and a leftover 1 inch piece that I can still use to build another rosette. I repeated the step for all 3 die cuts, and I then went ahead and started folding them along the score lines. You want to fold this accordion style, which means you are going to start with the scalloped pattern pointing towards the left, and you're going to fold your cardstock first away from you and then towards you. You can see it here, first away from you, then towards you, and then you're going to repeat this, alternating the folds, and you're going to do this for all 3 pieces. You can then go ahead and adhere all 3 of them together using some glue or a tape runner depending on your preference, and the reason why we needed to die cut 3 pieces is that we needed enough cardstock to be able to basically go around and build our rosette. And depending on the size of your final project, you're going to need more or less than 3 die cut pieces to start with. Next, we are going to glue down the two ends together to create basically a ring. And then once the glue is completely dry, all you need to do is to have your rosette on your desk with the scalloped part facing downwards. You then will press the center towards the desk, holding it in place and using that little die-cut circle which is coated with some glue to glue everything in place. To decorate the Lollipop card, I decided to die-cut some candy canes using the dies that are part of the kit. I used the base candy cane die to cut some watermelon fusion as well as some glitter cardstock, and then I'm going to use this die over here on the watermelon fusion cardstock and run everything through my die cutting machine so that I can create this fun striped pattern on this die cut, and I can layer it with the glitter cardstock to form my candy cane. I repeated the same steps for the second die-cut pieces, and I feel that having some glitter cardstock at the back of these candy canes makes them even more fun. Off camera, I also die-cut one of the pattern papers in the kit using the circle around dies, and I created a second wreath like the one that I have on my mini pillow box. So you just have to repeat the steps that I showed you earlier using the same tricks and the same colors of cardstock to recreate the second wreath over here. I then glued down the die-cut circle to the front of my rosette, and I adhered the two candy canes, having them a little bit at an angle and on top of each other to create some extra interest on this project. I added the wreath on top of the candy canes where they intersect there at the top, and then I mounted everything on a paper straw that I had at home and happened to be just the right shade of pink to match with that bubblegum cardstock that I used for the base of the rosette. I then stamped my sentiment with some whipped cream ink on some black licorice cardstock. I trimmed it into a thin strip and I adhered it to the front of this Lollipop card. And here is a close-up look at the finished project. Again, super cute, easy to make, and will make the perfect pair with that mini pillow box card that I showed you earlier. Before I go, I wanted to show you one more card that I created with products from the kit. I used some pattern papers to create the base for my card, and then I have a sweet little scene with those adorable polar bears. I did a little bit of ink blending using Turbo Teal and Cool Pool inks, and I also added some shimmer using Sparkle Silk. I finished everything off with some sequins, and here is a close-up look at this fourth project that I'm sharing with the FSJ and Spellbinders Christmas project kit. And that's it for today. I really hope you enjoyed this video and I hope you felt inspired. Don't forget that Spellbinders is having a release on the 10th of every month with lots of fun products, inspiration and video tutorials for you, and don't forget to check out the Spellbinders blog to join the party for this release. Thank you all so much for stopping by and have a great day.